Hey friends, welcome back to our channel. This is my husband Austin. I'm Lindsay if you're new here. Sorry it's been so long. We've been pretty busy lately, but we're back with our third episode, Living Within Your Means. And we have a few questions we wanted to start with, and then just a few little, tips or the things that we like to do to stay within our means. So examples that we live by. We are by no means experts. We have only been married for 10 years, but we do know a little bit about how to be debt-free. So that's what we want to share with you today. So thank you for stopping by, and hopefully you listen and stick around till the end.
Yes, so we're going to pose a few different questions to get us kicked off here. And so, Lindsay, you want to talk about the first question?
Yeah, what is debt?
So we're going to talk about what it is and what it's not. So from our standpoint, debt is nearly everything outside of a mortgage. So we would include student loan as being like debt that you want to kind of remove from your life. We would include car notes as being debt that you shouldn't necessarily have. Crazy phone spending, a lot of Amazon, eBay purchases, a lot of subscriptions that we typically have, your Netflix, your Amazon, your Hulu, whatever the people are using these days, all of those types of things. Eating out is a massive, massive expense, a lot of entertainment. Something that we could be up to our eyeballs in debt with is extraneous things that we have our kids go into. Like, for instance, sports or after school activities or piano lessons or whatever the case is. These types of things would be under, at least from our view, under the umbrella of debt. And so let's dive into the biggest one, the one that typically makes or breaks future financial decisions, and that is your mortgage payment. And so I know a lot of people, at least around our age, so 30s, mid-30s, they are likely renters just because, if you live anywhere in the West right now, you can't get away from the absolute ridiculousness that is the real estate market. It has priced people that are coming out of high school, people that are coming out of college, people that are in their even early 40s completely out of the market. Unless you are independently wealthy, you are largely not going to be able to have a lot of buying power when it comes to housing. And so that's one of the reasons that we're in this home that we've built, is because we didn't want to have the absolute crushing weight of a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 mortgage on us, because that puts a lot of burden on the husband to go out in the world and actually make that kind of money to then pay the house off and also provide the needs and the wants of the family. It also requires
the woman to probably.
Yeah, it would absolutely. Right now,
can't stay home with your children.
The entire time that we've been in the military, at no point could we have afforded, even the fairly rural places that we were in Texas, could we have afforded the typical home that would have suited our needs from the Western kind of sense. So every kid has, largely a bedroom, maybe a couple of our kids are sharing, but, with 6 kids and then the 2 of us, that would require at least moderately high, if not just exceedingly high, mortgage payment that we just weren't willing to kind of go into.
Well, it's not worth it in the end.
Right.
We're always working and we can't be with our family.
Exactly. Because, at the end of the day, we, as Orthodox Christians, we should seek first the kingdom of God. And that should be our primary focus. And I understand that as Christians, we all kind of inherently know that, but it becomes very easy when you've got this debt, these bills screaming in both yours and your wife's ear. It becomes very easy to take your focus and your eyes off of Christ and the pursuance of the faith that the apostles handed down, and more pursuing that next advancement opportunity at your job, all the overtime that you can possibly get, and then potentially saying, hey, wife, I love you, our kids need you, however, this house and these bills need you quite a bit more. So you need to actually go out into the hectic, crazy world environment, grab as high earning a job as you can get, and then that's kind of the next 10 to 20 years of your life, which, by the way, should be dedicated to those kids. And so we're going to talk about the instances where that would be considered debt and where it wouldn't be considered debt. All right.
So our next question, what is not debt? Because we already distinguished what is debt.
Mortgage could fall into or out of what, from our view, is debt.
Yeah.
And so, we know a lot of wonderful...
You have to have a house. Yeah.
You have to have a place to live, obviously. A lot of people right now are renting, and you don't have to have a castle and a kingdom. I mean, at some level, right? This is kind of our castle. It's more our church, our home. But in some sense, yeah, sure, this is our castle, right? Your castle can be fairly modest, and I think it absolutely should be. I believe it was St. John Chrysostom. However, I could be completely wrong on that. But the idea that he basically said with having a house is it's a lot like a shoe, in terms of you don't want it too small, and then it's a burden and not a utility to the foot. You also don't want it too large, because then it can easily, fall off of you. It can easily fall to the wayside. And we kind of see this in the practical sense today. Like if your house is too exceedingly expensive, you're never going to be a homeowner of the thing for which you have purchased. And then if it's too small, you're falling over each other. You couldn't say, okay, we're going to open our home to this or that family or this or that situation, because we feel the burden on our heart to do so as Christians. So again, it needs to accommodate your family, but it doesn't have to be this massive, exceedingly expensive thing. Because if all of our finances are tied up in our home, how much alms can we give? Do we even tithe, right? And these things are exceedingly important for Christians. And so, yeah. So depending on the position you find yourself with your home, with the property that you're renting or what have you, it could be considered, in our view, debt, or it couldn't be. It just depends on how much of your spending goes to that thing. So in relation to how much you earn, how much of that goes into purchasing that home. So go ahead and read it.
Next question, is being debt-free realistic today?
Is being debt-free realistic? So once again, from our view, from our standpoint, we don't consider like our electric bill, our vehicle insurance as debt. I mean, those things are
You're always going to have
the oxygen that you need to have in order to survive. Like that is basically that. There's just baseline payments that you're going to have to pay. So from our view, we don't consider those debt. So I guess that's kind of skirting the question. But yeah, you're never going to completely get away from debt. At some level, you always have a payment, whether it's your internet bill, so you're going to have, but that doesn't necessarily need to be debt. Like we would consider debt the thing for which I cannot afford in the present moment. Like we've never, well, I mean, I don't want to say never, because there was a point where early on in our marriage, and we'll get into this later, we were both working, and we really had nothing to show for it. And this is when we were homeowners previous to the military, when the market was infinitely better than it is now. And we were just like, wait, you're making a lot, and I'm working my butt off over here. Why don't we have a whole lot in the bank account afterwards? And we'll get into some of those things that we identified, and that I think would be helpful to you, the viewer. So,
yeah, those are the main questions that we have, and then we'll just go through some of the points that helped us, achieve debt-free living.
Yeah, so what is and what isn't debt? You, as the viewer, take some of what we're saying, whatever, but define that for yourself, and then do everything that you can to escape what is overlapping in your definition. Like, okay, this is debt. Oh, by the way, I have a lot of this. You need to do what you can to get out from under that burden. All right, so let's go into
our
the first
first
point.
major thing, well, obviously tithe. Like that's what
Yeah.
that is always number one. If you're a Christian, you should be giving alms. You should be tithing. So,
and also from the Christian's perspective, like, sure, I might be quote unquote smart and tech savvy. That's why I have this job, or whatever. I might be good with my hands. That's why I'm an electrician. Whatever it is. But ultimately, from the Christian perspective, everything that comes into our life is from God. It's not, oh, I was just so smart that I got this thing. It's those gifts. Who do they come from, right? So at every level, we can trace that back to a blessing from Christ. And it's our responsibility what we do with that. And so to be good stewards, we do want to tithe. We do want to give alms. We're not going to go into detail to try to, look like some altruistic. We're just not going to do that. But rest assured, like, it is incumbent upon us to tithe, right, to our local parish that is spiritually feeding us, to support the priest and so forth, and then also to give alms to the poor, because that's just incumbent upon all Christians. Like, we need to help those that are less fortunate, because the least of these is Christ that we're ultimately helping. And so, yeah.
That's number one.
So, and then again, I mean, think about this. If all of our earning potential is tied up in bills, but our heart, because we want to be like the example that Christ himself gave and all the saints, we want to be givers and good stewards. So that's our heart to give, but we strictly just don't have the finances to do that. That is a very, very depressing state to be in. And so once again, as Christians, we want to be able to give freely, and you can't really do that if you've got nothing to give. Sometimes it is giving your time, giving your wisdom that Christ has afforded you and so forth, giving, praying for, making petitions for others. But sometimes it is just a financial. And if you can't do that, that becomes very, very a hard thing to shoulder. It's a massive burden. And so we want to free up as much as we can. So that way, when we see the person in Walmart that has as many kids as we do, but it's just some, crazy scenario with a single woman, like, we want to be able to do what we can. Which is so common these days. Or just that single guy.
The people who look like they're struggling and they need help. You want to be able to just help them. And not you get the glory, but to give the glory to God and to be the example to those people, and let them know they're loved. They're not alone, because we've been there. So it's like we are able to not be there now. So we need to be able to help those when we see that they need help.
And even at our, times in our life where we were less financially stable, if you will, we wanted to do things as well. And so again, this, if you're a Christian, right, this is our burden, and it's very, very detrimental to our own kind of conscience when we can't do that. So again, we want to remove as many of those debt burdens as we can so that we can give freely. All right.
Okay.
What else?
The next one, don't spend what you don't have. This is the major.
Right. Really what this point is getting at, is exactly what it says. It's in the name, right? And so something that we did fairly early on is when you start making money, like we're talking back in like 2015, 2016, Lindsay had a job. She had just gotten out of, she got her medical degree at one of the local community colleges in Florida. And so for the first time, she was earning more than just like a minimum wage type of situation. And the same with me. I was earning more than just a minimum wage type of situation. So for the first time ever, we had, not just a couple of dollars in the bank account at the end of the pay period, but for the first time ever, like, we could afford more than just gas and, maybe our little car payment that we had or whatever the case is. And so we decided, you know what? I know we have a couch, but that one that we saw at Ashley Furniture, it looks really nice. And we've got money. Why don't we upgrade our refrigerator? Why don't we get a nice grill because we love, grilling out, or what, things that we could justify as, oh, we're not really, exceeding our spending. We're not really reaching. We're not getting the nicest thing. But at the same token, at that point, we had what we needed, and we just decided to spend a lot more. And so what we found one time, Lindsay was driving home from, was it Baptist Medical Center? So she worked at this hospital here in North Florida or whatever. Anyway, she was driving home, and I had looked at our account because we just worked different shifts, which, by the way, is a whole other thing. It's annoying when you and your wife are just kind of high-fiving. Love you, bye. As soon as she gets home, you're kind of gone. That is a massive detriment to your marriage. So really think about how much more do you need that extra, $500-$600 every 2 weeks.
Kind of suffers.
Because your relationship absolutely suffers. And it's like, we might not have made it to year 10 if we were doing that in year 5.
Still doing that, yeah.
Yeah. So we stopped that very, very early on because we decided, hey, we just want kids. And we'll take the pay cut. But again, we had to make those financial decisions to afford us that opportunity. But going back to this, so she was headed home. I was like, hey, Lindsay, I've been looking at I had our banking app open. I've been looking at our banking app, and we're making the most money we've ever made in our lives. Like we have a house and we're able to afford it and all these different things. And we don't have any money at the end of the pay period to kind of show for it. So we were actually in a worse boat than we were when she was working, kind of a much crappier job in terms of earning potential, and so was I. And I was like, well, why is that? We have the same payments now that we had. She gets home, and we realize we open up our account, and I'm like, almost like a Dave Ramsey, I'm kind of going through allocating what everything went to. Here's what we got paid, breaking it down on a piece of paper. And we saw that this was, I remember the day just because it was so shocking to both of us. So this was 21 days exactly into the month. So this wasn't even a full 30 days, but 21 days, so 3 weeks into the month, we saw that in 2016-ish, 17-ish?
Probably 17.
I think. 17?
Yeah.
No, it was 16 because it was way before the military. But anyways, we saw that Lindsay herself just going to and from work, because as people in the medical field, they typically work like 12-hour shifts.
Or night shift, too.
Or night shifts, right? And so there's not a whole lot open. So she would, when she's going to work, grab a bite to eat when she's coming home from work, because you're drained. And I get it.
And you eat while you're at work.
And then you eat snacks while you're at work, and then she would grab a bite to eat on the way home. And we realized, so in 21 days, she had spent, just her, $917 on fast food. And this wasn't, because she was some kind of just crazy,
No, I just got regular meals.
She just got regular meals at a McDonald's, at a Burger King, whatever, maybe a Chick-fil-A here and there, as she was headed to and from work.
I don't even know how that's possible.
And, you think about it, you spend $10 grabbing that, maybe you get a Starbucks here and there, maybe you get the Chick-fil-A on the way home, or whatever the case is. And you realize at the end of the day, it's not hard to spend $30-ish dollars. And you do that a tremendous amount. And we're talking, that's easy to spend about $900 about a 21-day period. It was ridiculous. It was $30 to $40 every day is what we saw. And she was just like, wow, I didn't realize I was doing that. And I'm like, I certainly didn't know either, but that's kind of where our money's going.
It's like, why even work if you're spending that much money?
Why even work? Because at that point we were living
your paycheck.
We were living, a county away from the county that she worked in. And so she was driving quite a bit. But regardless. So we were spending a tremendous money. So the biggest, what I'm getting at here is, while I don't agree with much of what Dave Ramsey says at this point, because I do think it is, we're just in a different economic situation than what was used to be successful then. I do agree with just being very analytical about your spending. So grab your banking app, look
That's what you spend your money
within
on.
that pay period, what exactly you are spending your money on. And I think you'll be shocked at the amount of subscriptions that you have and the amount of money that you are spending on food. Food is massive because it tastes so darn good. It's so convenient,
it's easy,
right?
Convenient.
And when you and your wife are working, who's home to make that meal? Right? So it makes sense to grab a meal. But when you look at how much money, when you think about it, your first 3 hours of your job could be spent on the crap that you purchased that day, as opposed to this is guaranteed to go into our account once Uncle Government takes its cut. This is all guaranteed to go into the account. That's largely not the case with most people. So cut down that extra spending that
Hardly
you absolutely
ever
don't
eating
need.
out, yeah.
Yeah, and so now let's actually go into that real quick.
Okay.
How often do we eat out?
I eat out once a week. No.
Once a week.
If that.
And we're
I try to
talking,
cut that
this
down,
could be
too.
anything from going to, one of our favorite, I don't really have favorite restaurants. I just don't like eating out.
doesn't like
I would
eating out. He
never
would
eat
never,
out
ever.
if I didn't have a family that wanted
But he
to.
doesn't have to cook or clean up the mess either, so that's why you don't mind.
Right, absolutely.
But I get
once
tired
again,
of it sometimes, and I want to eat out.
if my wife did not cook good, I would probably prefer the local Chili's or the Chinese place or the local whatever over. But my wife cooks so good that it's honestly just a downgrade whenever we go to somewhere and we pay the $60 to $120, for our large family to eat.
Yeah.
It's like, it's always just, well, dang, we could have stayed home and you could have cooked anything and it would have been at least twice as good as what we just had. So from my view, it's not only a financial stupid decision, but it's also just like, it doesn't even taste better. Like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
I would rather be in the comfort of my own home around my children and they can kind of run around as soon as they're done. You don't really get that, dynamic
Well,
in
plus
a
where we
restaurant.
live, a nice restaurant, it's kind of like really far.
Yeah, and that's been the case with most places we've lived. But even then,
We
so
don't live-
once
we live in
again,
little outskirts,
getting back
so-
to what we're talking about, we do not eat out for any reason. I don't care if it was her stopping at Walmart, grabbing the kids' corn dogs, or from the little deli area, or us going to a nice restaurant. We do not make more than one of those purchases every week. So that would be twice in a pay period.
The other one is develop cheap hobbies. This was your idea.
Yeah. So we did have originally, and once again, this is like back in when we were dating in 2014-ish, and 2015, right before we got married. We would go out, we would eat at Olive Garden, and then we'd go to the movies. And so we would do that probably a couple of times a week. That was a relatively inexpensive hobby then, because
Yeah,
it was
for
just
us.
the two of us.
Yeah.
A ticket back then was $6 a person-ish. We rarely ever had like the candy or the popcorn, so it was just $12 a piece. And then we would both get like a $10 or $15 meal at a place that we went. So we're talking for under $50, we could have a really nice few hours and enjoy ourselves, get to hang out, talk during dinner about the movie that we just watched or whatever the case was. So it was nice. We really enjoyed it. But doing that now, just because we don't typically pawn our children off to other people, even though we have wonderful people that we could do that with, we just don't like doing that. Like, we didn't have our kids to just fork them over to the grandparents or fork them over to the friends. We had our kids because we wanted to be a part of their
we
life
want to raise them. We
all the
don't
time,
want to just-
not some of the time.
Yeah.
And so, once again, so inexpensive hobbies. So what we started doing instead is like, okay, like nature's beautiful. Why don't we just go for a walk? So we would drive out to nice places. I mean, we live in Florida. Florida is, outside
when
of
we
the
went to
cities, Florida's
Texas,
beautiful
we'd go
absolutely
to
everywhere.
the
When we were in
Riverwalk.
Texas, we'd go to the Riverwalk almost every,
Weekend.
major city-ish has a river walk in Texas. It's kind of strange. But yeah, so we would always go walking. And not only is that good for you just from a practical standpoint of having some level of cardiovascular exercise, but it's nice because I get to walk, we get to hold hands, we get to just talk about nothing
Our kids
or a
get to
super
run
deep
and
conversation. Yeah, and then our kids get to run and play. And we don't have to like constantly be watching them as we would with if we went to like one of those big jungle gym type places or a
Yeah.
big bounce house type place where you're just like, I know not all parents are watching their kids. I know my kids can be violent at times. Like, I want to watch my kids. I want to watch the other kids and ensure that nothing's going on. Especially when you have, at this point, we would have 4 kids going in 4 different directions.
No,
That's a lot to
no.
watch.
I
So
don't
it's,
go anywhere without him with all my kids. That's just way too much.
yeah, so just
Yeah.
keep the hobbies something that is realistic. Still have them fun. Like, don't sacrifice fun because you want things to be exceedingly affordable. But also don't have it where you're spending $40, $50, $100 every time you go and do something, because then even if you do it just a couple of times a month, we're talking that's $100 or more. And then also, do you only want to hang out with your beautiful wife twice a month, once a month? No, you want to do this thing as much as possible as time allows. And you want to be able to rope your family into it. So something like going to the beach. If you don't have a beach, that's fair. You've got stuff in your Midwestern or state or wherever you are. You've got stuff you can do. Just figure those things out and
Go to the library.
maximize the affordability. Go to the library. This is something I think
My kids
love
the library.
a lot of people sleep on this. It's like the library has been so cool. I mean, you can get largely any movie that you want there. So we used to, when we were in Texas, every week we'd go to the library. Our kids would get to pick out 2 kind of DVDs and then, maybe a couple of books. And throughout the week we would read the books to them. But then on movie night on Friday, we would we'd make like homemade pizza or something or whatever the case is, and then have a movie night with our kids. And so they weren't getting to watch TV all the time, so that was super. That was a very special moment with them, and then we'd all just sit down and watch some dumb little kids movie.
It's free. Like you
And it was
you
free.
don't have to buy movies.
Yeah, and it
or
was
rent
free.
them.
And you're doing things with your kids that aren't, hey, take this thing and beat it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's do this thing together. And so once again, that's just been a priority for us. But yes, going back to it, make your hobbies as affordable as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another one that I will say, it's not on here, but this for me, I have the habit of just like, if I think of something that I want, I just go on Amazon and just buy it. Because it's here in 2 days. So if you have that problem like me, and you're trying to cut back on there, because if you look at your account and you're like, Amazon, just buy an Amazon gift card with however much you want to use that month. Take your credit card off of Amazon. Put the Amazon gift card on there, so that's your limit.
Yeah, if you really struggle,
That's-
like this is an exceptional case. If you really struggle
Yeah.
with just hitting the buy now or the add to cart, and you
Remember,
buy
I
that
used
night.
to spend like $500 a month.
We used to
Why?
get a box.
Every
Time I'm coming home, kicking
Yeah.
my boots off, taking my blouse off from work or whatever, and sitting down and, saying hi to the kids. I see like 4 boxes that she's just thrown out in the garage.
Yeah.
Because of course, why take it to the trash? But she just threw it out into the garage, and I'm like, Lindsay, what the heck? And what would we have to show for it? It was like crap that we don't even have to this day. It's stuff that we've donated to a thrift store years ago because it ultimately wasn't a purchase that was lasting or meaningful. So our point here is, maybe go down the road of buying those gift cards and just sit down with your husband and talk about that. Husband, sit down with your wife and talk about that. How much flexibility you have with that spending, and then buy a gift card. That way you can't spend more than that.
Yeah, and take your credit card off so you
Right.
can't just hit pay.
Right. And then also another thing is, this is what we did far more than the gift card thing, is we said, look, I want X or she wants Y. We're going to sit on that want, that desire, because it's not a need or we would already have it. We're going to sit on that want for about 30 to 45 days. And if we still want it, then we'll just pull the trigger on buying it.
Yeah.
And what we often found is
it.
we could live without that. And really it was just a in the moment type of purchase. And we didn't need it. We didn't need it for any reason. And so maybe start to implement that and come up with whatever arbitrary time that's going to be give you the most success. But I would say put off that initial pleasure, because ultimately a lot of that stuff is absolutely meaningless and fruitless, because we don't even have many of the things that we've purchased throughout the years because we gave them away. All right.
The next one, we don't go on vacations. Now, this is like 2 parts, because we don't go on a lot of vacations because we have a lot of little kids.
We're going to, exactly. So this is 2 parts. So
Yeah.
vacations. A lot of people that we have seen, and this is a personal choice, although I think this is one that's worth making in the United States, or just in the West in general, because I don't think a lot of like second or third world nations even think about these things. So this is really just a first world nations kind of Western thing. The entertainment that you spend that money on that are kind of the big purchases. So you're not going to do these monthly. You might do them quarterly or once, maybe twice a year. And so what we're talking about is like things like Disney World, things like amusement parks, things like going to that resort, things like going on that cruise, whatever these things are. We just disagree with the agenda that places like Disney World have. And so it doesn't matter if I was going to get a free ticket to Disney World. I would personally not make that decision because I don't want to in any way support something that is trying to propagandize and destroy this generation of children through all of these different movements that we've seen are showing the evil head in the propaganda, which is Disney. And so that, maybe the parks and theme parks don't actually have that propaganda, but that props up the budget that they have for these movies to then spew that ideology into your kids. So yeah, the entire thing is thrown out in our view. And so that is, yes, it is a massive financial decision, but it's also more just a moral decision. I don't want to support these companies that are actively trying to degrade our way of life, our ethics, and so forth.
And what would you say to someone that says you shop at Walmart and they...
So there are things that are
necessities
that are unescapable. So if I just said my hard line is the alphabet mafia, like if I said my hard line is that, and anything that is in support of that, whether by finances or through its branding or whatever the case is, and I said, okay, we're putting a hard stop to that. I honestly don't know how to research every bit of that. I do know the things that are absolutely overt, and those are the things that I will just not support. In fact, like a Chick-fil-A, I actively do not support Chick-fil-A, but there's a Burger King bag over there. My wife just purchased Burger King. I'm sure that their views would align in terms of the alphabet mafia. The reason I don't support Chick-fil-A is because they purport to be a top-down Christian organization, and yet they are also in support of the alphabet mafia, and some of their insurance plans go towards abortifetal pills and all of those, abortifacient, whatever it is, abortion ultimately. And so I would just absolutely disagree with those things. And so you can't call yourself a top-down Christian organization and then also support these things. And so yeah, like you've completely lost. It ain't Lord's chicken anymore, right? And so in our view, but yeah, and so Starbucks is the same way. All these sort of overt companies,
they used to be so good,
that push these types of agendas, like we'll never get another red cent from us. And that's just,
it's a sacrifice because
it is a sacrifice because now the things that we used to do, the things that we used to spend time and money and effort on, we just simply do. We have told ourselves we don't have access to those things anymore. But ultimately, this goes back to we're not on earth to satisfy our pleasures and desires. True. We are on earth to violently pull heaven to earth and pursue the kingdom of God and promulgate the kingdom of God as Christians. And so, once again, if that means that we don't get to do all the fun things, that's actually often what that means. And so, that's not a sacrifice in our view.
Our pleasure and our happiness.
Because we're laying down this to get this exceedingly abundant thing. And again, like that's not a sacrifice, that's not a burden when you think about it in terms of that Christian milieu. Okay.
Yeah. Also, another one is I do a lot of grocery pickup. Because...
Well, real quick, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
So last point on that last point was, can you read it again just in case it got lost in the sauce?
No lavish vacation.
Yeah, so once again, our kids, we have two twins that are 5 months, right?
They're 6 months old.
6 months old. Okay, it shows how much I know. 6 months old. We have a almost 2-year-old. Then we've got a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And so ultimately, if we were to say, hey, we're going to go, we've really never been to the West Coast recently. I did in the military, a little bit TDYs here and there, but we haven't been. So we're going to go to the West Coast and just spend some time, or we're going to go to Alaska, or we're going to go to this country or that country. Because we really want our kids to have a good time. Like, I know this sounds kind of counterintuitive potentially, but our kids right now, if we could just turn this camera around, they are playing in a mound of dirt that we have that we're using to level various parts of the property out. They have been playing on that mound of dirt for about an hour. They are all filthy, but every one of them right now has a smile on their face because they're playing together, right? And they're playing with their friends.
Making memories.
They're making memories. And so what they're doing right now with his little Tonka truck and, their little digging and so forth is they're building a memory that is absolutely free to us, but it's just as impactful as that Disney trip or that trip to wherever. Think about how much you remember from 6 years old. You might have fallen and hit your head, so you have that lasting kind of traumatic experience. But there's not a whole lot that we typically remember. So our kind of perspective on this is wait until your kids are older, to where when you spend that $3 to $12,000, whatever it is, that's actually going to create. It's just going to deepen the memories that you already have, as opposed to potentially just get washed away in the ocean of crap that we don't even remember. And so, that's just a perspective we have. Take it with a grain of salt, whatever. But that's the last point on that. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I was talking about grocery pickup. I like to do grocery pickup because, one, it's convenient. I don't have to take all my kids in the store. But if he's able to watch the kids, I'll go by myself and shop, and I do like that. But I like to do that because, if I'm buying it all on my phone on the app, I'm not tempted in the store. I'm not tempted in the store to just go and anything I see that catches my eye, I throw it in my buggy. And I do that a lot because I always end up shopping when I'm hungry for some reason. So it's like, I'd be like, oh, I'm getting all the stuff that I need. But as soon as I see something that looks tasty, I just throw it in my buggy. So it's like you're actually spending more money. Unless you're the type of person who can actually write a list and stick to it. I'm just not one of those people. So that's another little trick that I like to do is do grocery pickup.
Yeah, let's face it. Unfortunately, in the West, something that we suffer from a lot is discipline and self-control. Those are typically not things that are pushed in the society. And so we struggle as Christians, as people, with discipline and self-control. And so in that vein, when we go in, when our tummy's grumbling, right, those chips are now going to find their way into the cart. That that ice cream is going to find its way. What we're trying to say is, if I don't have to go into the store, one, it's just from a practical standpoint, it's much easier than having to unbuckle and buckle 6 different kids, put them in the cart, whatever, right? So just logistically, it's much more practical to purchase that way. And then also, the picture of the image of something is a lot less tantalizing than it is seeing those chips. And now I've walked in the store, I want to come out with those, right? So, and then also I'm not seeing the myriad of different things that Walmart has on rollback or on clearance or whatever the case is. So then I'm like, oh, well, this is like $3 off. I can justify my purchase now. How often do you men and you women come home and tell your spouse, which by the way, never even asked, oh, but it was such a good deal. It's like, I don't care. You spent $100. I don't care if you got $300 worth of stuff. We didn't need any of it anyways. I mean, who's ever spending $100 and getting $300? It's not a thing, right? But you get the idea, yeah. So clearance is just it is a way that will absolutely erode.
And if it's something you need, you type it in on the app. It comes up. It shows you what's on rollback. So you're getting the deal there.
Yeah.
Anyways, another one that I like to do is shop in bulk. I shop at Sam's and Azure Standard. And I compare the prices because sometimes Walmart has something cheaper than Sam's. Sometimes Sam's has something cheaper than Walmart. So it's like you just have to do your work and see. But that's one. And then this is a simple one. I love coffee, but I don't just go buy coffee all the time. I used to when I worked. And then we cut our own hair.
But one thing that I saw a lot when I was in the military is typically it's not dogma, but it's recommended you get your hair cut basically weekly so that you can look presentable, especially in the job that I was in. And so that's expensive. I mean, you men know, even if you're getting a crew cut, whatever, a skin fade, whatever it is.
$25.
It's about $25 because you're not going to give a tip to the dude or the woman that's cutting your hair. Like we're just a tip culture.
Yeah.
But so you're going to give them a tip, and you're going to spend, I mean, $20 to $30 depending on where you go. I haven't seen it much cheaper than that anywhere that I've been.
And women, it's like $70 to $80.
Right. And so, a lot of women get their hair dyed. That is exceedingly expensive. And again, I love Lindsay's hair just the way it is. Like, yeah, I like the way that God made my wife. I'm asking her to absolutely take care of her health and take care of her, those types of things, sure. And I need to do that as well. But I don't want her to get the fake eyelashes or get the dyed hair or get the crazy toenails and nails and crap. Because all those things come with a cost, but then also it's just, that ain't my wife. Like my wife is who's sitting here. So here's what I would say. Men, look at the average clothes that you wear. Like right now, yeah, we're just kind of thrown together because we're at home. It's a Saturday, and we're about to start working out on the property here in a minute. But if you're wearing just the nicest name brand stuff, if your hair is freaking edged up every other week or every week, think about how much excess spending you're getting on that. I mean, I knew a lot of guys, obviously not necessarily in the military, but that we get their beards edged up all the time. And we're talking, that's like a lot of money. Because when you get your beard, you're also getting, a trim on the sides and all that other stuff. And so you're spending a lot of money at the end of like a 4-month period on just your hair. I started cutting my hair, and it really wasn't bad. Like, people used to ask me, hey, man, where'd you get your hair cut? And at first, it was because it was so bad. And then over time, at about the 3-month mark, it was actually better than the on-base barber, which isn't saying much, for those of you that are in the military, and better than the off-base barber as well. And so I could keep up with that, and it really only cost me the price of like a $45 hair clip set. And so I was able to cut my hair for about 3 years doing that and saving literally thousands of dollars because once again, a haircut every week is very expensive over the course of 3.5 years. And then we cut my son's hair. We cut it every single time.
Yeah. And I cut my own hair.
Yeah. It's not hard to cut a kid's hair. And let's be honest, your kid's going to be cute nearly whatever you do to them. Like, let's be honest. Like, we don't have ugly kids. I'm sure you don't have ugly kids. Your kid's going to be cute to you regardless. And then our kids are adorable, so they're going to look fine. Okay, next one.
I think we only have like a few more, which is secondhand clothing, or we shop most of our clothes at Walmart for our kids. And I've shown you in one of my videos, like you can get kid shirts for $4. And if you go to a thrift store, they're going to be like $3 or $4 and they're used. So might as well shop at Walmart. They have really cute clothes. They're good quality. So that's where we shop for all of our kids' clothes.
Yeah, the nicest stuff we'll get is, well, I would say it's at like a thrift store. I've gotten a lot of cool, nice name brand stuff. Like every running shoe I've had the last 7-ish years, I've gotten from a thrift store, and they've all been like Asics. I had a pair of Nikes that were really nice, like very, very nice shoes that I got for anywhere from like $8 to $15. And like this, almost everything that I wear I've gotten from, the newest I've gotten is like a Walmart. I get a lot of just plain T-shirts at Walmart.
You've gotten a lot of like nice cotton quality shirts because we're trying to get a lot of cotton stuff, like 100% cotton.
Yeah, and stay away from like the synthetic stuff. That's just like a personal, decision. But regardless, so like getting our clothing, because as many kids as we've had that are constantly growing out of things, those first 3 kids is where you're really spending all the money on clothes, because then you can recycle and reuse a lot of that other stuff. Yeah. But once again, so just, you don't have to get brand new every time. You don't have to get just because it's a massive expense. Or if you do want to get really nice quality, just get really nice quality, but get like 3 of those shirts. So it's like you can just wash them, if you prefer having nice quality for your kids. But they just get stained. We certainly wouldn't. Anyways, I don't think ever. You don't need a large quantity if you want a nice quality. And by the way, getting out of the military, earning potential has changed quite a bit just because it's very set in the military, just because it's based off your rank and everybody knows how much each rank gets paid. But then getting out of the military, the earning potential has changed drastically. And so even though we're able to make more than when we were in, we're not changing our lifestyle because we've found a lot of success with this. We found a lot of peace with this. Because initially Lindsay came into the relationship with student loan debt, with a pretty substantial car note.
Yeah, that was big.
And, so we came in with some debt, and our first priority was, hey, let's figure out where the spending is going so that we can start attacking this debt. Mm-hmm. Because thankfully we had, none of our parents are perfect, but we have great parents. And so one of the things that my parents certainly taught me, and I'm sure Lindsay's parents taught her, is to just, you don't need debt. Like mm-hmm. You shouldn't have debt, and because it will erode at your relationship. And so that was one of our first priorities. Now, getting into used cars, this is a massive one. Everybody's driving a nice car these days. Almost everybody, not almost, a lot of people that I know that are younger than us have much, much nicer cars than us. Mm-hmm. Like we hang out with a few young people that have wonderful, immaculate, nice cars, $50,000, $60,000 vehicles. Like, our house was barely that much, right? So I'm never, ever going to spend that much on my vehicle. Like that, That is a massive waste of money. I don't know that I could be argued out of this because, like many of you out there, I'm kind of one of those guys that's like, if I can do it, I learn a skill and I save money, I'm going to do that. So if I have time to do it, I'm not calling the electrician, I'm not calling the plumber, I'm not calling the auto mechanic. I'm doing it myself. We have YouTube, we have endless resources online, and then I've got wonderful family members who have largely done everything I would ever want to do anyway, so I can pick their brain and potentially use their tools. And so, not everybody's in that scenario, but just do as much as you can. And what I would say is, we were upside down on a vehicle. Like I said, hearkening back to that Lindsay, that purchase that Lindsay made before we got married. It was a very, very nice car, beautiful car. Mm-hmm. It was a Honda Accord Sport. Had a really cool look. It was a 2013, and we got married in 2015. So it's fairly new, had almost no miles on it. She paid a pretty penny for it. Mm-hmm. So we were upside down on that vehicle, and that just simply means, for those of you that don't know, like the vehicle, we paid more than the vehicle was possibly worth. We couldn't sell it, just a personal sell to an individual, or potentially trade it to a dealer. It wasn't worth what
we owed on it.
Right, and get our money back on it. So we would have still given it or essentially sold it to somebody and had $6 or $7 grand left on it to pay, which is no small thing for a newly wed couple. So over some, I kind of feel like Michael, some fancy financial footwork or whatever he says in that video with Oscar, we were able to get out from under that vehicle. And I don't know how feasible this is anymore, but I was able to trade up that vehicle and really make good trades with that vehicle until we were able to trade the vehicle I traded it for and make a lot more money. And so all this to say, our first financial decision when we got that vehicle was just a massive burden because the car payments were well over $300. And again, this is back when that was a lot of money. Which wasn't too long ago.
I know,
which
it's crazy
insane.
now because people pay like
we have friends and family members who pay $700-800.
Yeah, they pay
Go outside. We'll call you in a bit, baby.
They pay like $1,000 a month for their
that's
car
car note and insurance. And so we had other dudes that were my same rank in the military that had $800-900 car payments, and we're talking their car was wonderful. It was a very nice car, but it was just they couldn't afford to do anything because again, it's not like you can work overtime. And so, used vehicles is where we found the most success because when you get that vehicle, especially today, you're looking at the average vehicle being at least mid-20s to potentially mid-40s is the average. That's not the nice. That's not the most that is just like the average vehicle. And so you want to come in as low as possible on that, or get as used within reason, right? Like maybe you get a slightly nicer car for your wife and kids because like you don't want anything to potentially happen when they're out driving. But again, do what you need to do, but I would say stay away from massive car notes. They are just an absolute waste of your resources.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to mention was try to have a savings account. Unexpected things come up, just like us this week. Like 2 days ago, our pump burnt up and melted.
So our septic,
Yeah,
we had a pretty catastrophic power, not catastrophic. We had a power outage that only lasted for several hours. Mm-hmm. And when it came back on, it malfunctioned something with our septic pump. And so the pump was running 24/7, regardless of there being water for it to pump into the septic tank. And what that did ultimately is it burnt the pump up. Mm-hmm. And so when I, sat down and started working, I did not expect to spend $650 that day. But it was something that I didn't have experience with. Now I watched and recorded what those guys did. They were kind enough to walk me through a couple of things. And this might be something you'll see with people that are working on your stuff. Just sit out there with them. As awkward as that is, sit out there with them, and see what they're doing and ask them for tips on it. And now I was walked through that process, A, B, and C. So if that ever happens again, I know exactly what to do. I just need to buy the pump. And he gave me the brochure for it, so I know how to install it and everything else. So, yeah.
If you don't have a savings account, you'd be paying on a credit card for that.
You'd purchase that on a credit card, and if you can't, pay that off, what are you getting hit with those interest rates? I mean,
well, what happens next week? Like, what if you have to go buy a new tire? There's just things that come up. So always try to have a savings account. That's from David.
What we're not saying is, in the traditional sense of like what David Ramsey typically says, is have like a massive savings account where you've got, potentially thousands upon thousands of dollars in there, because ultimately your money is depreciating so fast. Your assets, your fiat currency is depreciating so fast. And by the way, it hasn't been propped up by anything for decades. And so, like, you don't want to just sit on money, because your little, 0.57% interest rate in your savings account at your local federal credit union is not going to even put a dent in what the depreciation is every year. And so, I would say wisely invest your money into assets, property, or potentially stocks. And that's obviously something that we're not going to give any advice with, but just research and do your due diligence there. I would not sit on a massive amount of money. We have done that before, and essentially what we were doing is saving all of our tax returns for like 6 or 7 years, and just keeping them in a savings account. And at the end of the year, you would have a dividend of like $13 on tens of thousands of dollars, and it's like, what? So figure out what you need to do with that money. I would say personally, have an emergency fund, but don't have an excessive savings account. That's just what I would say. Do you have any last thoughts on this?
My last thought is, obviously, if you've made it to the end, thank you for watching. Sorry it took so long to get this out. We've been busy. He's training for a new job. We've had a little bit of a sickness going on, so it's like we've been dealing with a lot of stuff, as are everyone else in the world. I'm not saying, anyways. But if you know anything, like if you and your family use any tips or tricks or anything we did not mention, let us know, because we're always trying to add.
And really, it's not just for us. It's for anybody that comes by that comment. Quick recap. Minimize the extraneous spending, and only you know what your spending is. Minimize it. The first thing is analyze what you're spending your money on, from your mortgage all the way down to that $10 subscription. Analyze everything that you're spending your money on, and I promise you what you will find is 15 to 40% of that stuff is stuff that you probably don't need and you could do away with, and your life would almost be identical. So figure out what those things are, do away with them, and then now you've got that purchasing power to put into Alms, to give to your local parish, to help bless or change somebody's life with. or to get that thing that you need, or to put into that savings account so that when something happens, you don't have to throw it on a card.
Well, think about this too. I know a lot of mothers want to stay home with their kids, but they can't because of the financial burden.
It's a really good
Think
point.
about how much it costs you to send your kids to school, whether you drive them, whatever the case is, all the activities that go along with that. You pay for their lunches, the parties, the activities. Would it be cheaper for you to just stay home and do that on your own? There are homeschooling curriculums that are free. You don't have to work. Now, if you wanted to just go working on the weekends, maybe that's something you could do. And you could still get to stay home with your children. So that's something to think about as well. Just sit down and see how much
Because
that would
ultimately,
cost
I
you.
think if you pair this with the rest of our life, and we're not just talking about strictly finances, ultimately the cost of everything is not strictly financial. The cost of Lindsay going to work full-time, myself going to work full-time, even if it's a remote job like the one that I have now, or something that's taking us to a brick and mortar that is in our home, that is going to have a far higher cost than strictly financial on our children and their rearing. Even if I were to give them to my parents for that specific time, Lindsay's parents for that specific time, guess what? Those people love and adore my children, but they aren't me and they aren't Lindsay. Okay? Strictly speaking, they're not going to have a sense of what is best for this kid in this moment. And then there's things that I just simply don't want them doing with my kid. Like, I don't want my mom or dad to have to spank my kid. I certainly don't want Lindsay's parents to have to spank my kid. But there are things that my kids need spankings for, and they're not going to have those situations of development if they're with other people that are not us. So we're going to maintain that standard, that consistency, and then just pump experience and time and love into our children that they're not going to get even in an environment like their grandparents, which obviously love them and are well-intentioned and all of those things. Last thing, unless Lindsay has any more nuggets she wants to add, is please, if you hear us giving spiritual advice, what we were doing in that moment is we are likely overstepping. We are lay people. We are certainly not clergy, and we never want to come across as speaking dogmatically in a spiritual matter. Please. And I probably should have opened with this. I just didn't know we were going to get to this point with everything. But please go to your priest. Consult clergy in the church. Do not take our word for it, or
Don't just take what we say.
and really, this is just good
Run with
advice
it.
in general, because there's wonderful apologetics channels that have been so beneficial in our lives. But if it's not coming from a canonical priest, right, those things can get highly judgmental, highly charged, and ultimately, certainly in this Lenten season, what's the beautiful, beautiful prayer of St. Ephrem the Syrian is like, let me not judge my brother, but yet focus on myself, because I am the problem. And so that's kind of where we should all be. But yes, please understand that we are broken. We are people that sin often and consistently. And so please don't take our spiritual advice. So if we've overstepped our bounds at all, that is not our intention. Please go to your priest and rectify anything that we've said. And certainly pass it through the filter of the church and not through the filter of any apologetics that you might have heard us say. Please. But with that being said, thank you for listening. God bless you. And evaluate and analyze your finances. That way you can start getting some freedom in that aspect. And then you'll see, if this is you for the first time, you can be that person that is charitably spending their money, charitably giving, and so forth, which we are failing at all the time. But again, thank you for watching.